John sat in the spacious, yet starkly modern office that overlooked the bustling streets of his city on a newly colonized planet. The planet, a melting pot of human entrepreneurial spirit and alien cultures, buzzed with the energy of a frontier town paired with interstellar technology. Despite the advanced setting, his day-to-day challenges remained remarkably mundane, especially today's task, finding a new maid. His old friend Mike had recommended trying out an Alari, one of the species that had been more open to working with humans. They're efficient, almost uncannily so, Mike had explained over drinks the previous week, and their temperament is perfect for more delicate tasks. A soft chime signaled that his appointment had arrived. He pressed the button on his desk. "Send them in," he said. The door slid open silently, and in walked Lyra, the Alari Maid agency had sent over. She was taller than most humans, slender, with luminous skin that seemed to subtly change hue with her movements. Her large, expressive eyes gave her a serene presence, which seemed almost out of place in John's utilitarian office. "Mr. John Anderson?" Her voice was melodic, yet clear, with a slight trill that John found fascinating. "Yes, I'm John. Please, have a seat, Lyra." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "I understand you're here regarding the maid position?" "Yes," Lyra nodded, her eyes scanning the room in quiet curiosity before settling back on him. "I have experience in various domestic tasks, and I'm keen to work in a human household to better understand your culture." John was impressed by her calm and straightforward manner. "That sounds perfect. I'm actually looking for someone who can manage the house, cleaning, cooking, that sort of thing. But also, someone who can handle things when I'm traveling for business. It's not just about keeping things tidy, it's about trust too." Lyra nodded, her gaze steady. "I understand the importance of trust, Mr. Anderson. You will find my services most satisfactory." Their conversation shifted to logistics, Lyra's previous experience, and her references. John found himself enjoying the discussion far more than he expected. Lyra's insights into her own culture were intriguing. As they spoke, the initial formality of the interview melted away, leaving a friendly rapport in its wake. "So, Lyra, how do you find our planet compared to Alara?" John asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. "It is different." She chose her words carefully, a smile playing on her lips. "Vibrant and loud, and your cities never sleep. On Alara, it is tranquil, more attuned to nature. But I like the energy here. It's invigorating." John laughed. "I suppose it can be a bit noisy. Hopefully, you'll find the apartment quiet enough. It's just me there, so you won't have to deal with too much chaos." "That sounds ideal, Mr. Anderson. I appreciate simplicity and quiet when not working," Lyra responded. As they wrapped up their meeting, John felt a sense of ease about his choice. "Well, Lyra, unless there's anything else you need to know, I think we're all set here." Lyra stood, extending her hand. "Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I look forward to working with you. Please call me John. And welcome aboard, Lyra." As she left, John watched from his window as she navigated through the throngs of the city with an effortless grace. Maybe Mike was right, he thought. Maybe an Alari was exactly what he needed in his hectic life. 3 weeks into Lyra's tenure, John found more than just his household running smoother. His evenings were more relaxed, filled with intriguing conversations about alien customs and shared stories from Earth. Lyra's presence seemed to bring a new balance to his life, something he hadn't realized was missing. One such evening, John returned home later than usual, the weight of a challenging day at his tech firm resting heavily on his shoulders. As he entered, the aroma of something unfamiliar and inviting greeted him, dissipating the cloud of his work stress. "Lyra, I'm home," he called out, loosening his tie and dropping his briefcase by the door. In the kitchen, John, came the response. Lyra appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. "I tried making something new tonight, a traditional Alari dish. I thought it might cheer you up." John smiled, touched by her thoughtfulness. "That sounds fantastic. Let's have it then. I'm starved and could use a good meal." In the dining room, the table was set with care, 2 plates beautifully arranged with a dish that looked as exotic as it smelled. They sat down, and Lyra explained what each component was as they began to eat. "This is called Zalara," It's a comforting dish back on Alara, usually made to lift spirits, she explained. Well, it's delicious, John complimented, taking another hearty bite. You'll have to teach me how to make this sometime. I would like that, Lyra said, her eyes brightening. The meal progressed with easy conversation. Afterward, they moved to the living room with a couple of drinks. John shared a humorous anecdote from his college days, and Lyra laughed, her amusement filling the room with warmth. As the evening wore on, a comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the soft hum of the city outside. John turned to look at Lyra, noticing the way the city lights played across her features, casting her in a glow that made her seem almost otherworldly. You know, I'm really glad you decided to join me here, John found himself saying, the words more sincere than he'd intended. Lyra turned to meet his gaze, her expression soft. I am, too. I've learned a lot about humans since coming here. You're quite different from what I expected. And what did you expect? John asked, intrigued. I'm not sure. I suppose, less complexity. You are all so driven, yet capable of such profound kindness and silliness, she mused. John chuckled. We're full of contradictions. But I guess that's what makes things interesting. They shared a look, something unspoken passing between them. It was John who moved first, a gentle gesture, reaching out to tuck a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Lyra's breath hitched slightly, her large eyes locked on his. John, she started, but he didn't let her finish. Sorry, I shouldn't have. He began to pull back. No, it's not that, Lyra interrupted, her hand catching his. It's just that no one has ever. Her words trailed off as she leaned forward, closing the small gap between them with a kiss that was tentative at first but grew more confident as John responded. His mind raced with the implications of what was happening, but he found himself lost in the moment, driven by a connection that felt as deep as it was sudden. When they finally parted, breathless, the look in Lyra's eyes was one of wonder and slight apprehension. John, ever the peacekeeper, reassured her with a gentle smile. Let's take things one step at a time, he suggested softly. Yes, one step at a time, she agreed, her smile returning as they settled back into the couch, closer now, the night stretching before them with new, unexplored possibilities. Over the next few weeks, the dynamic in the house subtly shifted. The air was charged with a newfound awareness between John and Lyra, each glance and touch loaded with meaning. It wasn't just their casual interactions that had changed. Their evenings together became prolonged, filled with conversations that often danced around personal anecdotes and shared secrets. One such night, as autumn winds whispered through the city and into the slightly ajar windows of John's living room, they found themselves sprawled on the couch, a bottle of wine on the coffee table, each nursing a glass. You really don't have anything like wine on Alara? John asked, swirling the dark red liquid in his glass. Lyra shook her head, her eyes on the liquid. No, our intoxicants are more mild, less about the senses and more about enhancing empathy. It's different. Empathy enhancers, huh? John mused. That must make parties interesting. Lyra laughed, a sound that John was growing increasingly fond of. It does. It makes it easier to connect with others. Here, though, I think the barriers are higher, even with alcohol. Maybe that's true, John conceded. He looked at her, the soft lighting accentuating the contours of her face. But sometimes, barriers coming down can be a good thing. Their conversation drifted to the topic of Earth music, and John shared some of his favorite tracks with Lyra, each song sparking new discussions about culture and emotion. Music turned out to be a universal bridge, and Lyra was keen to compare it to Alari melodies. As the evening deepened, Lyra moved to the piano in the corner of the room. May I? She asked, her fingers already poised above the keys. Please, John encouraged, intrigued. He watched as she played a simple, haunting melody that filled the room with its alien harmony. That's beautiful, he said as the last note lingered. It's so different from human music, but just as moving. Lyra turned to him, her smile tender. Music is the language of the soul, I think. It's universal, even if we're worlds apart. Moved by the moment, John rose and sat next to her on the piano bench. "Show me," he said, his voice soft. For the next hour, they shared the piano bench, Lyra teaching John the basics of Alari music theory, her hands guiding his on the keys. The physical closeness, the warmth of her body next to his, the touch of her hands, it all intertwined with the music, creating a symphony of sensations that was hard to ignore. When they eventually returned to the couch, there was a palpable shift in their proximity. They sat closer than before, shoulders touching. John turned to Lyra, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. This time, there was no hesitation in his touch. Lyra met his gaze, her eyes reflecting a mix of emotions. Without a word, she leaned in, bridging the gap between them with a kiss that spoke of mutual longing and recognition of the step they were about to take. As they deepened the kiss, their hands explored with respectful curiosity, learning the texture and response of two very different biologies. John was gentle, mindful of Lyra's different anatomy, and in turn, Lyra's touches were explorative, filled with the care of someone discovering a new aspect of being. After some time, they pulled apart slightly, breathless and more aware than ever of the connection they were forging. "This is new for me, John," Lyra whispered, her voice laced with a mix of wonder and caution. "For me too," John replied, his hand caressing her cheek. "But it feels right. Does it feel right to you?" "Yes, very right," she confirmed, her hand covering his. The decision to cross this line had been unspoken but mutual. As they sat together, letting the night stretch on, the city around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the reality they were creating together. A reality of shared warmth and understanding beyond any differences of world or species. The shift in John and Lyra's relationship brought an unexpected intimacy into their daily lives, but it wasn't long before they faced unforeseen complications. One morning, Lyra appeared particularly unsettled, her usual calm demeanor replaced by a touch of anxiety. John noticed her discomfort during breakfast. "Lyra, you seem a bit off today. Is everything okay?" John asked, his voice filled with concern as he passed her the coffee. Lyra hesitated, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "I'm not sure how to say this, John. I think I might be." She paused, searching for the right words in her limited human vocabulary. "Sick?" John offered. "No, not sick," Lyra corrected softly. "I think I might be pregnant." The cup in John's hand clattered slightly against the saucer. "Pregnant? But how? I mean, we didn't think that was possible." Lyra nodded, her eyes meeting his. "I didn't either. I consulted a xenobiologist yesterday. It seems we are biologically compatible enough for this to happen. It's rare, but it can happen." The news settled between them like a thick fog. John ran a hand through his hair, trying to process the information. "What does this mean for you, for us?" Lyra took a deep breath. "On Alara, this is unexpected. We have ways to plan these things, control them. Here, I'm unprepared. And our child, it will be both Alari and human. That's unheard of." John leaned back, his mind racing with the implications. "Okay, let's think this through. We need to figure out what you want to do, how we can support you. Both of you. I need some time to think about this, John. I never imagined starting a family under these circumstances," Lyra confessed, her voice trembling just slightly. "Of course, take all the time you need. I'm here for you, Lyra. Whatever you decide, I'll support you," John reassured her, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. The next few days were tense. John researched human Alari genetics, seeking advice from medical professionals and xenobiologists, trying to understand the medical and social services available to them. Meanwhile, Lyra spent time contacting her family on Alara via interstellar communication, seeking their advice and emotional support. In the evenings, they would come together, sharing their findings and feelings. One such evening, as they sat on the sofa with their data pads scattered around, John broke the silence. "I've found a clinic that specializes in interspecies reproductive health. They're quite progressive, and they've handled a few cases similar to ours. Maybe we could go talk to them, see what our options are," John suggested. Lyra nodded. "I spoke with my family. They are surprised but supportive. They want me to be happy and safe. Seeing a specialist is a good idea. I want to understand everything about this, Arrangements were made, and the following week they visited the clinic together. The specialist, Dr. Mireille Leconte, was both kind and professional, explaining the physiological nuances of their situation and discussing prenatal care. So, the pregnancy will be somewhat faster than typical human gestations, but slower than Alari, Dr. Khan explained. We'll need to monitor Lyra closely to ensure both her health and the babies develop properly. Lyra, holding John's hand tightly, asked the questions that flickered through her mind. Will the baby be okay? Are there risks because of our differences? Dr. Kant offered a reassuring smile. There are always risks, Lyra, in any pregnancy. But we have advanced quite a bit in interspecies medicine. We'll do everything we can to mitigate those risks. As they left the clinic, John wrapped an arm around Lyra's shoulders, pulling her close. We'll figure this out together. Lyra rested her head against his shoulder, her voice soft. Together, she echoed, a term that had come to mean so much more in the light of their current situation, embodying not just a physical union but the beginning of something entirely new. After visiting the clinic, John and Lyra found themselves grappling with their new reality. John had invited his closest friend, Tom, over to discuss the situation and seek his advice. Tom, who had always been a pillar of support, was keen to help however he could. As they sat in John's living room, a few beers on the coffee table, the atmosphere was tense yet hopeful. John recounted the details of their visit to the clinic, and Lyra occasionally chimed in with her perspective. Tom, I just don't know how to handle this. It's all so overwhelming, John admitted. Running a hand through his hair in frustration, Tom nodded, taking a sip of his beer. Look, John, it's definitely a unique situation, but you're not in this alone. You've got Lyra, and you've got friends like me who will back you up. Lyra offered a small smile, grateful for Tom's support. Thank you, Tom. It means a lot to hear that. My family is supportive, but they're far away, and the cultural differences. It's complicated. Speaking of cultural differences, Tom leaned forward, looking curious. How does this work on Alara? I mean, the whole pregnancy thing. Lyra explained. On Alara, conception is always planned. We have technologies to control when and if we want to start a family. To have it happen unexpectedly and with someone from another species, it's not just unusual, it's unheard of. John looked at Lyra, his expression one of concern. And how are you feeling about all this? Really? Lyra paused, her emotions clear in her eyes. Scared, but also, there's a part of me that feels connected to this new life in a way I never anticipated. It's part of both of us, John. Tom nodded, his demeanor serious. It's going to be okay. You both are handling this with a lot of grace. Just remember to keep talking to each other. No matter what. The conversation shifted as they discussed practical matters like adjusting the living arrangements and preparing for a child in a house that had never anticipated one. Tom was full of suggestions, trying to lighten the mood with lighthearted jokes about baby-proofing the house for a half-human, half-Alari child. You might need locks on the cabinets sooner than you think, Tom chuckled. Alari children are quick learners, right, Lyra? Yes, very quick, Lyra agreed, managing a laugh. Our children start walking and talking much earlier than human babies. As the evening wore on, the initial shock and apprehension gave way to a more constructive and detailed planning session. John felt a renewed sense of purpose, and Lyra's involvement in the discussions about the future showed her commitment and resilience. Before Tom left, he clapped John on the shoulder. You've got this, man. Both of you. Just keep pushing forward and remember, you're not alone. John and Lyra thanked him, and as they stood at the door watching him leave, Lyra turned to John. This is going to change everything, isn't it? John took her hand, squeezing it gently. Yeah, it is. But we'll manage. Together, we'll figure it out. That night, as they went to bed, the enormity of the situation seemed less daunting. They had each other, and with each passing day, the idea of becoming parents, despite the circumstances, felt less like a challenge and more like an unexpected gift. They fell asleep, their thoughts intermingled with fears and dreams of what lay ahead. As Lyra's pregnancy progressed, the changes in her became increasingly visible, bringing about both excitement and apprehension for her and John. Their world was transforming, But so were the challenges they faced as a couple navigating a relationship that not everyone was ready to accept. One afternoon, John and Lyra decided to go for a walk through the city. The bustling streets felt a bit more intense than usual, filled with the constant hum of people and vehicles. John held Lyra's hand, providing her a steady presence, though he could feel her tension as they moved through the crowds. "People are staring," Lyra murmured, glancing down at her slightly rounded belly, which was now unmistakably showing. "Let them stare," John replied firmly, squeezing her hand. "They'll get used to it. We just have to be ourselves." They walked through the marketplace, picking up a few things for dinner, exchanging polite greetings with familiar vendors. But as they moved to an area filled with more strangers, John noticed the curious looks. Some people gave polite nods, but others seemed surprised, or even disapproving. He felt his own frustration rise, but tried to stay calm for Lyra's sake. As they reached a quieter corner near a small park, John's old friend, Lisa, approached them, her expression filled with cautious warmth. Lisa was one of John's college friends who had recently moved to the city. "John, it's been ages," Lisa greeted him with a hug, then turned to Lyra with a friendly smile. "And you must be Lyra. John's told me about you." Lyra returned the smile, relaxing slightly. "It's nice to meet you, Lisa." Lisa's gaze fell to Lyra's belly, and her eyes lit up with genuine curiosity and interest. "So, when's the big day?" she asked. "Not too far off," Lyra replied with a gentle laugh, clearly grateful for the warmth in Lisa's tone. "It's been an unusual experience, but I'm learning so much about myself and about humans." Lisa nodded with enthusiasm. "Well, I think it's wonderful. It's not every day you see something as beautiful as a new life bringing two cultures together." The three of them spent some time chatting in the park, Lisa asking questions and listening intently as Lyra shared her experience. The conversation was uplifting, reminding John that there were people who could embrace their relationship, people who saw it as something valuable. After Lisa said goodbye and left, Lyra took a deep breath, her eyes on John. "That felt good. Sometimes I forget that acceptance is out there. It's easy to feel isolated." John pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "You're not alone. We have friends who care about us, like Tom and Lisa. They're the people who matter." As they continued their walk, John decided to take Lyra to his family's home, a modest but inviting place just outside the city. He'd been meaning to introduce Lyra to his parents, and although he had his worries, he knew it was time. When they arrived, his mother greeted them at the door, her face a mixture of surprise and delight. "John, and this must be Lyra," she said warmly, pulling Lyra into a gentle embrace that caught her off guard. "Yes, Mom, this is Lyra," John confirmed, his nerves settling at his mother's acceptance. His father soon joined them, offering a firm handshake and an encouraging smile to Lyra. As they sat down for tea, his mother turned to Lyra with a sparkle in her eye. "So, Lyra, I hear you're giving us our first grandchild. That's something worth celebrating." Lyra's eyes softened with relief, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. "Thank you. I didn't expect such a warm welcome." "Of course," his mother replied with a laugh. "Any child of John's is family, no matter where they come from. We're thrilled for you both." "Aren't we, honey?" she asked, nudging John's father. "Absolutely," his father said, nodding. "We're here for whatever you two need. Don't hesitate to ask." They spent the evening discussing the baby, the differences in human and Alari traditions, and how they might blend both cultures for their child. It was a relief for John to see his parents embracing Lyra, treating her with the kindness and respect she deserved. Later, as they walked home, Lyra looked at John, her expression serene. "Today was more than I could have hoped for. I didn't expect to feel such support from those closest to you. You're part of my life, Lyra. They see that, and they care about you," John said, his arm around her. "I know, and I'm grateful. This was something I didn't realize I needed. To feel like I belonged," she admitted quietly. "You do belong, Lyra. With me, with this family. We're building a life together, and I won't let anyone take that away from us," John promised, his voice firm. As they walked back through the city, past the lights and sounds of the world around them, they felt a renewed sense of unity. They weren't just a man and an alien trying to make things work. They were a family, forging a path into the future together, no matter what society thought. The night sky stretched wide above them, and for the first time in a while, both felt a sense of calm as they looked ahead to the life they were creating. As the due date approached, John and Lyra's lives became a whirlwind of preparations. They converted a spare room into a nursery, mixing elements of both human and Alari traditions. Each step brought them closer, solidifying their commitment not just to each other, but to the family they were about to start. One afternoon, as they were putting together a crib, John held up a screwdriver with a confused expression. "Are you sure this part goes here? This thing is looking more like a puzzle than a crib." Lyra laughed, holding up the instruction manual. "According to this, yes. But human furniture design is not very intuitive." John chuckled, shaking his head. "Well, I guess it's good practice for handling surprises, right?" Lyra looked at him, her smile warm. "We've already had plenty of those, haven't we?" They worked in silence for a few moments, and then John asked, "So, what are Alari cribs like? I know they're different from this." "Oh, very different," Lyra replied, running her fingers along the wood. "Our cribs are more open, like small hammocks. They move gently to mimic the sway of Alara's winds. It's meant to help babies feel calm." John looked thoughtful. "We could rig something up like that if you'd like. I'm sure I could find a way to add a swaying mechanism to this crib." Lyra's eyes brightened. "Really? That would be wonderful. Our child will grow up here, but I want them to feel connected to my world too." John nodded. "Absolutely. I want them to understand both sides of their heritage." He paused, then added with a grin, "And if they have half your patience, they'll probably be the calmest kid in the galaxy." Lyra laughed, nudging him. "And if they have half your stubbornness, they'll be a handful." They shared a smile, the weight of the journey they'd taken to reach this point settling comfortably between them. They had moved through misunderstandings, societal scrutiny, and countless small challenges, yet here they were, ready to bring a new life into the world. After a long day of setting up, they finally sat together in the newly arranged nursery, gazing at the room filled with elements of both Earth and Alara. Lyra leaned her head on John's shoulder, a peaceful expression on her face. "Do you think we'll be good parents, John?" she asked softly, her fingers intertwining with his. John took a deep breath, thinking about all the changes they'd gone through. "I think we'll be great parents. We're ready to face whatever comes. And our child will have two worlds to learn from." Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Thank you, John, for everything. I never imagined my life would turn out this way, but now, I wouldn't want it any other way." John wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "Neither would I, Lyra. We're in this together, no matter what. And our child will know they're loved by both of us." They sat there in the quiet, holding each other, each silently looking forward to the moment their child would enter the world. A perfect blend of two people, two cultures, and two worlds, ready to embrace the future together. The day finally arrived with the dawn of a soft, misty morning. John paced outside the clinic room, nerves tightening in his stomach as he waited. Inside, Lyra was surrounded by both human and Alari medical staff, a unique team assembled just for this momentous occasion. Though she had assured him she would be fine, John's heart raced, his hands clasped and unclasped as he tried to stay calm. After what felt like an eternity, a nurse peeked her head out, giving him a reassuring smile. "You can come in now, John." Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The room was filled with soft light, and there, lying against the pillows, was Lyra, holding a small, swaddled bundle. Her face was glowing, a tired but joyful smile lighting up her features as she looked at John. "Come meet our child," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. John approached, his heart pounding as he leaned down to see the tiny face nestled in Lyra's arms. Their baby was beautiful, with delicate features that blended both their worlds. The skin had a faint, almost ethereal sheen reminiscent of Lyra's, while the eyes, still adjusting to the light, seemed to carry a warmth that reminded John of his own family. "Hello there," John murmured, gently touching his child's hand, which wrapped around his finger with surprising strength. His voice was thick with emotion. "You've got quite the grip, don't you?" Lyra laughed softly. Alari babies are known for that. It's a sign of vitality. John chuckled, his eyes never leaving the small face. Well, looks like they've inherited more than just your beauty. Lyra smiled, glancing between John and their child. They're a perfect blend of us, John. Both human and Alari. I never thought it would feel so complete. He nodded, unable to speak as he took in the sight of his family. A few minutes passed in silence, the weight of the moment settling warmly around them. Finally, John broke the quiet, his voice filled with wonder. So, have we thought of a name? Lyra looked at him, her eyes reflecting the emotions that had filled their journey. I have an Alari name in mind. Amara. It means new light. But I also want our child to have a human name. John considered this, nodding slowly. Amara? I like that. And how about Lee for a middle name? It's a family name on my side, and it means meadow, a place where different things grow together. Lyra's eyes glistened, and she gave him a gentle nod. Amara Lee. I think it's perfect. The days that followed were a blur of sleepless nights, learning curves, and shared laughter. John and Lyra found themselves working together seamlessly, each supporting the other as they adjusted to the new rhythm of parenthood. Tom and Lisa visited often, showering Amara with affection and bringing gifts from both human and Alari cultures. Even John's parents arrived with handmade toys and blankets, embracing their grandchild with enthusiasm and pride. One evening, after settling Amara into her crib, John and Lyra sat together on the couch, exhaustion mingling with happiness as they finally had a quiet moment alone. Life has changed so much, John said, his hand resting on Lyra's. I never thought I'd end up here, with a family I couldn't have imagined. Neither did I, Lyra replied, her eyes softening as she looked at him. But every day, it feels more right. We've built something unique, John. Something that bridges our worlds. He smiled, giving her hand a squeeze. And it's only the beginning. Who knows what the future holds? Lyra leaned into him, closing her eyes as she rested her head on his shoulder. Whatever it brings, we'll face it together. For Amara, for us. The city hummed outside their window, but within their small home, the air was filled with the warmth of a new beginning. Their journey hadn't been easy, and there would be more challenges ahead, but as they sat together, they knew they were ready to face it all, together, as a family.